The stars looked peaceful through the thick glass windows of the new frontier. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge, watching the endless black space filled with tiny white dots. His ship was big and strong, built to carry heavy cargo between the human colonies. Right now, they were carrying food, medicine, and tools to a small colony 3 weeks away from Earth. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been flying ships for 20 years. Most of the time, space was quiet and boring. Ships would fly for weeks without seeing anything interesting. That was how Jake liked it. Boring meant safe, and safe meant his crew would go home to their families. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Lisa Brooks sat at her station, watching the communication screens. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and quick fingers that could work the radio better than anyone Jake had ever seen. Amy Chun was at the navigation station, making sure they stayed on course. Danny Walsh sat at the science station, reading reports about the cargo they were carrying. "Captain," Lisa said suddenly. Her voice was sharp with surprise. "I'm getting something strange on the emergency frequency." Jake turned his chair toward her. "What kind of strange?" Lisa put her hand to her earpiece and listened carefully. Her face became confused. "It's not human, sir. The language is completely different, but there are mathematical patterns in it. Universal math sequences." Danny stood up from his station and walked over to Lisa. He was a thin man with thick glasses, who knew more about alien life than anyone else on the ship. "Play it on the main speakers," he said. The bridge filled with sounds that no human had ever heard before. The voice was high and musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. But underneath the beauty, there was something else. Fear. The voice shook with terror and desperation. "The math sequences," Danny said, pointing at the numbers appearing on Lisa's screen. "They're using prime numbers and geometric progressions. This is definitely a distress call." Jake felt his stomach tighten. In 20 years of flying, he had never heard an alien distress call. Most people back on Earth still argued about whether aliens even existed. "Can you translate it?" Danny and Lisa worked together for the next hour. The ship's computer tried to find patterns in the alien language. Slowly, words began to appear on the screen. The translation was rough and broken, but the message became clear enough to understand. "Help us," the voice was saying. "Please, anyone who can hear this. We are the Vellani. We live in peace. We never hurt anyone. We grow food and make art and care for our children. But the Korath have come. They kill us. They eat us. They destroy our homes." Amy looked up from her navigation station. She was a small woman with bright eyes, who rarely spoke unless she had something important to say. "Captain, I'm tracking the source of the signal. It's coming from a star system about 3 days away at full speed." The alien voice continued its desperate plea. "We have no weapons. We do not know how to fight. Our people believed that violence was wrong. We thought all thinking beings would feel the same way. We were foolish. The Korath see us as food, nothing more. They have destroyed 12 of our worlds. Only one remains." Jake listened as the translation continued. The Vellani were herbivores, plant-eaters who had never developed weapons or armies. They had built a peaceful civilization based on art, science, and farming. When the Korath found them, it was like wolves finding a flock of sheep. "Our city has shields," the voice went on. "But they grow weaker each day. The Korath ships fire on us without stopping. They want to break our spirits before they break our walls. 10 million of my people huddle in the city, waiting to die. Our children ask why this is happening. We have no answer." Danny looked at the captain with worry. In his eyes, "Sir, according to this message, The Korath had been attacking the last Villani city for 6 days. The shields are failing. They estimate they have maybe 3 or 4 days left before the city falls. The alien voice became quieter, sadder. If anyone hears this message, please remember us. Remember that we existed. Remember that we tried to live in peace and warn others. Warn them about the Korath. They are coming. They will not stop with us. They hunger for all thinking life. The message ended. The bridge became silent, except for the humming of the engines. Jake stared at the empty screen where the translation had been. 200 people worked and lived on his ship. They were cargo haulers, not soldiers. They had mining tools and repair equipment, not weapons. Most of them had never been in a fight in their lives. Lisa spoke first. "Captain, should I send this to Earth Command?" Jake nodded slowly. "Yes, send it immediately. Mark it as urgent alien contact." "Sir," Amy said quietly, "Earth Command is 6 weeks away. Even if they send a fleet immediately, it would take them at least 4 weeks to reach the Villani system. That's too late." Jake knew she was right. By the time help arrived from Earth, 10 million Villani would be dead. He thought about the voice in the message, so frightened, but still hoping that someone somewhere might care enough to help. "Captain," Danny said, "there's something else." The message included star charts and navigation data. The Korath aren't just attacking the Villani. According to this information, they've been moving through this part of the galaxy for months, destroying everything in their path. If they finish with the Villani, human colonies could be next. Jake stood up and walked to the main window. He looked out at the stars and tried to think clearly. The smart thing to do was report to Earth Command and continue their mission. The new frontier was not a warship. They had no business fighting aliens. But Jake kept hearing that voice, asking someone to remember them. 10 million people were about to die, and they had sent their final message to the stars, hoping that someone would care. The Villani had never hurt anyone. They grew food and made art and loved their children, just like humans did. "Lisa," Jake said finally, "send the message to Earth Command, but also prepare another message. Tell them that the new frontier is changing course to investigate. Tell them." He paused, knowing that his next words might doom his crew. "Tell them that humans don't ignore calls for help." The bridge became very quiet after Captain Morrison made his decision. Lisa Brooks finished sending both messages to Earth Command. Amy Chun started plotting a new course to the Villani system. Danny Walsh began studying everything they knew about the aliens who were dying 3 days away. Jake knew his crew was scared. He could see it in their faces. Lisa kept looking at him like he had lost his mind. Amy worked at her station, but her hands shook slightly. Danny cleaned his glasses over and over, which he always did when he was nervous. "Captain," Lisa said carefully, "should I announce the course change to the rest of the crew?" Jake nodded. "Call all department heads to the main meeting room in 1 hour. I want to talk to everyone." Word spread quickly through the ship. The new frontier had over 200 people on board. There were engineers who kept the engines running, medical staff who took care of everyone's health, security guards who protected the cargo, and dozens of other workers. Most of them were just regular people trying to make a living by moving goods between the colonies. Pete Collins was the chief engineer. He was a big man with oil-stained clothes and strong hands that could fix anything. When he heard about the course change, he started checking all the ship's systems. If they were going into danger, everything had to work perfectly. Betty Rodriguez ran the security department. She was a former police officer from Mars Colony, tough and smart. Her job was usually to watch the cargo and make sure nothing got stolen. Now she started thinking about what weapons they had on board. The answer was not much. A few stun guns for dealing with troublemakers, some cutting tools that might work as weapons. Nothing that could fight a real enemy. Dr. Helen Martinez worked in the medical bay. She was a kind woman who had joined the Sea Young cargo runs because she wanted to help colonists who lived far from good hospitals. When she learned they might be going into a fight, she started preparing for wounded people. She gathered all the medical supplies and cleared space for emergency surgery. 1 hour later, the department heads gathered in the main meeting room. Jake looked at their worried faces and took a deep breath. He knew what he was about to ask was crazy, but he also knew it was right. "I'm sure you've all heard about our course change," Jake began. "I want to explain why we're doing this." He told them about the Valani message. He explained how 10 million peaceful aliens were about to be killed by an enemy that saw them as food. He described how the Korath were moving through space, destroying everything they found. "Earth Command will send help," Jake said, "but it will take weeks. The Valani don't have weeks. They have days." Pete Collins spoke first. "Captain, with respect, we're not soldiers. This ship carries mining equipment and farming tools. We're going up against alien warships." "I know that," Jake replied, "and I'm not ordering anyone to fight. Anyone who wants to can take an escape pod to the nearest colony. No one will think less of you." Betty Rodriguez crossed her arms. "Captain, what exactly are you planning to do when we get there? Ram their ships? We'll all be dead in 5 minutes." Jake had been thinking about that question during the whole hour. Maybe we can't win a fight, but maybe we can buy time. Maybe we can distract them long enough for the Valani to strengthen their shields or evacuate some people. Maybe we can make them think twice about attacking innocent people. Dr. Martinez leaned forward. "How many people are we talking about?" "The enemy, I mean." Danny adjusted his glasses. "According to the data in the message, the Korath fleet has at least 50 large ships, maybe more. Each ship probably has hundreds of crew members." The room became silent. 50 warships against 1 cargo hauler. The math was simple and terrible. "Here's what I think," Jake said slowly. "Humans have something that most aliens probably don't have. We come from Earth. Earth is what scientists call a death world. Everything on our planet tried to kill us for millions of years. Big animals hunted us. Diseases killed us. Weather tried to freeze us or burn us or drown us. But we survived. We didn't just survive. We became the top predator on our planet." Pete looked confused. "Captain, I fix engines." "I never hunted anything bigger than a rat." Jake smiled. "But you have the instincts, Pete. All humans do. When you're trapped in a damaged engine room with fire all around you, what do? I find a way out," Pete said. "I don't give up." "Exactly. You fight until you win or die trying. That's what makes humans different. We're the only species we know that evolved by facing death every single day. Other aliens probably evolved on peaceful planets where the biggest danger was not finding enough fruit to eat." Betty was starting to understand. "You're saying we might scare them because we're crazy enough to fight when we should run." "I'm saying we might surprise them," Jake replied. "They're used to fighting people like the Valani, peaceful beings who don't know how to hurt anyone. They've probably never fought someone who grew up on a world where everything was trying to kill them." Lisa spoke up. "Captain, even if you're right, we still don't have real weapons." Jake turned to Pete. "Pete, could you modify the mining lasers for ship-to-ship combat?" Pete thought for a moment. "Maybe. They're designed to cut through rock. Metal shouldn't be much different. But the range would be short. We'd have to get very close to enemy ships." "What about the cargo containers?" Jake asked. "Could we load them with explosives and fire them like missiles?" "Possible," Pete said, getting interested despite himself. "We have plenty of mining explosives." And the cargo launchers are powerful enough to shoot containers at high speed. Betty was nodding now. We could turn this whole ship into a weapon. Use everything we have. Dr. Martinez looked worried. Captain, a lot of people are going to get hurt, maybe killed. I know, Jake said quietly. That's why I'm not ordering anyone to stay. This has to be voluntary. He stood up and looked at each person in the room. I'm going to address the whole crew in 1 hour. I'm going to tell them what we're facing and ask for volunteers. Anyone who wants to leave can take an escape pod to safety. Anyone who stays will help us try to save 10 million innocent people. Jake paused and looked out the window at the stars. I've been thinking about what those Velani said in their message. They asked someone to remember them, to remember that they existed and tried to live in peace. But I think they deserve more than just to be remembered. They deserve a chance to keep living. Pete Collins stood up. His big frame seemed to fill the room. Captain, my grandfather fought in the war on Europa. He used to tell me that good people have to stand up to bullies, even when the odds are bad, especially when the odds are bad. He looked around the room. I'm staying. Betty Rodriguez nodded. My family came from Mexico on Earth. My great-grandmother used to say that running away just means the bad guys win somewhere else tomorrow. Count me in. Dr. Martinez sighed. Someone will need to patch up all you crazy people when this is over. I guess that's my job. Danny cleaned his glasses one more time. I've spent my whole life studying aliens. I never thought I'd meet any this way. But maybe it's time to stop just studying and start helping. Lisa looked around the room at all the determined faces. Well, someone has to keep you all in contact with each other during the fight. Might as well be me. Jake felt something warm growing in his chest. Pride, maybe, or hope. All right then. Let's go tell the crew what we're planning. And let's get this ship ready for war. 3 days later, the new frontier dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Velani system. What Jake Morrison and his crew saw on their screens made their hearts sink. The enemy fleet was enormous. Dozens of dark warships surrounded a small blue planet. The ships were huge and covered with weapons. They looked like giant metal sharks swimming through space. Captain, Lisa said in a quiet voice, I count 67 enemy vessels. They're all bigger than us. Amy Chun studied her navigation screens. The planet's surface is mostly dark, sir. But there's one bright spot on the night side. That must be the last Velani city. Danny Walsh worked frantically at his science station. The city's shields are failing, Captain. I can see explosions on the surface. They're running out of time. Jake stared at the enemy fleet. Each Korath ship was at least twice the size of the new frontier. Their dark hulls were covered with weapon turrets that glowed red in the darkness. These were ships built for one purpose, to kill and destroy. Are they reacting to us? Jake asked. Lisa monitored the communication channels. They're sending signals to each other, but nothing directed at us. I think they're confused. They probably can't believe that one small ship would come here. Jake understood their confusion. In their experience, intelligent species ran away when they saw the Korath fleet. No one was stupid enough to fly directly into a battle they could not win. But the Korath had never met humans before. All stations, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. We are here. Everyone knows what we're doing and why. Remember, we're not trying to win a conventional battle. We're trying to buy time and cause confusion. Use everything we've learned about fighting on Earth. Over the past 3 days, the crew had worked day and night to prepare their ship for war. Pete Collins and his engineers had turned the mining lasers into weapons. They had loaded cargo containers with explosives and programmed them to fly at enemy ships like guided missiles. Every tool and piece of equipment on the ship had been examined to see if it could hurt the enemy. Betty Rodriguez had trained everyone in basic combat tactics. Even the cooks and janitors now knew how to fire a weapon and take cover. More importantly, she had taught them how to think like predators instead of prey. "Amy," Jake said, "take us in fast. Use everything you learned flying through asteroid fields." Amy's fingers flew over her controls. The new frontier shot forward like a bullet. The ship twisted and turned as it flew toward the enemy fleet. Amy had grown up on a space station where she had learned to fly small ships through dangerous debris fields. Now she used those skills to dodge the first enemy shots. The Korath ships began firing as soon as the humans got close. Red beams of energy lit up the space around the new frontier. But Amy was already somewhere else, spinning the ship through a corkscrew pattern that no Korath pilot could predict. "First target approaching," Amy called out. "Big ship dead ahead." "Fire mining lasers," Jake ordered. Pete Collins had done. Good work. The modified mining lasers cut through the enemy ship's armor like it was made of paper. The Korath ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal, but instead of celebrating, Jake gave his next order. "Ram the debris field. Use the explosion." As cover, Amy flew the new frontier directly through the wreckage of the destroyed ship. Pieces of metal bounced off their hull, but the explosion hid them from enemy sensors for a few precious seconds. "Launch container missiles," Jake ordered. Betty Rodriguez and her team had loaded 20 cargo containers with mining explosives. Now they fired these makeshift missiles at the nearest enemy ships. The Korath were expecting energy weapons and deflector shields. They were not prepared for simple explosives flying at high speed. 3 more enemy ships exploded as the container. Missiles hit them. The Korath fleet began to panic. They had never seen tactics like this. Most species fought with energy weapons at long range, following predictable patterns. Humans fought like wild animals, using whatever worked. "Captain," Lisa called out, "the enemy is trying to surround us." "Good," Jake replied. "Amy, fly us right into the middle of their formation." Amy looked at him like he was crazy, but she obeyed. The new frontier dove straight toward the center of the enemy fleet. Korath. Ships fired from all directions, but many of their shots hit other Korath ships instead of the fast-moving human vessel. "Now, Pete," Jake ordered. Pete Collins had prepared a special surprise. The new frontier's cargo bay doors opened, and the ship began venting its atmosphere into space. But this was not an accident. The rushing air carried thousands of metal, bolts and pieces of scrap metal that Pete had collected. These flew out like bullets, tearing holes in nearby enemy ships. "Decompression attack complete," Pete reported. "But sir, we're losing air fast." "Seal the cargo bay and switch to emergency oxygen," Jake ordered. "How many enemy ships have we destroyed?" Danny checked his sensors. 7 confirmed kills, sir. "But there are still 60 ships left, and they're getting organized." The Korath fleet was indeed recovering from their surprise. The alien commanders were smart. They began to understand that the humans were using unusual tactics. The enemy ships spread out and started firing in coordinated patterns. "Hull breach on deck 3, Betty reported. "We're taking damage." "Medical emergency on deck 5, Doctor." Martinez called over the communication system. 2 people hurt. Jake felt the ship shaking as enemy weapons hit them. The new frontier was tough, but it could not take much more punishment. They needed to do something dramatic. "Amy, can you get us close to that big ship on the left?" Jake asked. Amy looked at her screens. The ship Jake was pointing to was enormous, probably the enemy flagship. It was covered with weapons and surrounded by smaller ships. Flying close to it would be suicide. "Yes, sir," Amy said. "But we won't survive the approach." "We don't need to survive it," Jake replied. "We just need to get close enough." He turned to Pete Collins. "Pete, how much power do we have left in the main reactor?" Pete's eyes went wide as he understood what Jake was planning. "Enough to overload it, sir." "Are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" "I'm thinking that humans have always been willing to die to protect others," Jake said. "And I'm thinking that the Korath have probably never met anyone crazy enough to turn their own ship into a bomb." Lisa looked at her captain with a mixture of fear and admiration. "Sir, if we overload the reactor, everyone on this ship will die," Jake nodded. "But maybe our sacrifice will give the Valani enough time to strengthen their shields. Maybe it will make the Korath think twice about attacking innocent people." He activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We're going to ram the enemy flagship and detonate our reactor. It's been an honor serving with all of you. Tell our families that we died as humans should, protecting those who needed protection." The bridge crew looked at each other. Then one by one, they nodded. They were scared, but they were also proud. They were about to do something that would be remembered forever. "Amy," Jake said quietly, "take us home." Amy Chung smiled and pushed the engines to maximum power. The new frontier shot toward the enemy. Flagship like a comet, ready to show the galaxy what humans would do for strangers who called for help. The new frontier shot toward the massive Korath flagship like an arrow aimed at the heart of the enemy fleet. Amy Chun gripped her controls tightly as enemy fire filled the space around them. The ship shook and groaned as weapons hit their hull, but Amy kept them on course. She had made peace with dying, but she was determined to make their deaths count. 30 seconds to impact," Amy called out. Jake Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. Lisa Brooks was still at her station, sending their final message. To Earth. Danny Walsh monitored the enemy fleet, making sure they would hit the right target. Pete Collins worked frantically to prepare the reactor overload. They were all going to die, but none of them looked afraid anymore. 10 seconds, Amy announced. Jake closed his eyes and thought about the Velani families hiding in their city below. 10 million peaceful people who just wanted to live and grow food and raise their children. At least they would know that someone had tried to help them. 5 seconds, Amy said. Suddenly, Lisa Brooks screamed, "Captain!" New contacts dropping. Out of hyperspace. Lots of them. Jake opened his eyes and looked at the main screen. Space around the Korath fleet was filling with new ships. But these were not more enemy vessels. These ships had the familiar shape of human warships, and there were dozens of them. "Pull up," Jake shouted to Amy. "Cancel the ram." Amy threw all her strength into the controls, pulling the new frontier away from the flagship at the last second. They missed the enemy ship by less than 50 meters. The Korath vessel's weapons fire followed them, but suddenly stopped as the enemy realized they had bigger problems. "This is Admiral Kate Thompson of the Earth Defense Fleet." A strong female voice came over the communication channels. "All Korath vessels will withdraw from this system immediately or face destruction." Jake stared at the screen in amazement. The human fleet was enormous. He counted over 100 ships of all sizes. There were military battleships with their hulls painted black and covered with weapons. There were converted civilian ships that had been quickly armed for war. There were even small mining vessels like his own, but flying in perfect formation. How did they get here so fast? Danny asked in wonder. Lisa was working at her station, picking up radio chatter from the fleet. "Sir, they're saying that every human colony contributed ships. Mars sent 20 vessels. The Jupiter stations sent 15. Even the small mining colonies sent everything they could spare." Admiral Thompson's voice filled the communication channels again. "Korath fleet, you have attacked innocent beings under human protection. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal, or we will consider you hostile targets." The Korath fleet commander responded with a message full of alien words that the translation computer could not understand. But the tone was clear. They were refusing to leave. Very well, Admiral Thompson said calmly. All human vessels, engage enemy targets. Show them why you don't threaten the innocent while humans are watching. What happened next became known throughout the galaxy as the Battle of Velani Prime. The human fleet did not fight like other species. They did not form neat lines and exchange fire at long range. Instead, they attacked like a pack of wolves hunting prey. The human ships broke into small groups and surrounded individual enemy vessels. They used their superior speed and maneuverability to stay close to the Korath ships, where the larger vessels could not bring all their weapons to bear. When one human ship was damaged, 2 others would protect it while it retreated. Admiral Thompson commanded from her flagship, a massive battleship called the Retribution. But she did not stay safely in the rear. The Retribution led charge after charge into the enemy fleet, her weapons cutting through Korath ships like a sword through cloth. Captain Morrison, a new voice came over the radio. "This is Captain Steve Parker of the destroyer Phoenix. We heard what you did here. The whole fleet heard. You held them off with a cargo ship until we could arrive. That took real courage." Jake felt tears in his eyes as he watched the human fleet tear into the enemy. Ship after ship of Korath vessels exploded or fled the battle. The aliens had never faced an enemy like this. They were used to fighting peaceful species who tried to minimize casualties. Humans fought to win, no matter the cost. "Look at that," Amy said, pointing at her screen. A group of human ships had surrounded a Korath vessel that was trying to escape. Instead of just destroying it, they were herding it back toward the main battle. They wanted to make sure every enemy ship knew that retreat was not an option. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 40 Korath ships had been destroyed, and the rest were fleeing toward the edge of the galaxy. Not a single enemy vessel had been allowed to land on the Velani planet. Admiral Thompson's voice came over the radio one final time. "All Korath vessels within range, listen carefully. You have attacked a species under human protection. This will not be tolerated. If any Korath ship attacks innocent beings anywhere in this galaxy, we will find you. We will hunt you to the edges of space. Earth remembers its enemies, and Earth protects its friends." Jake looked at the planet below. The Velani city was still there, its lights shining brightly in the darkness. 10 million people were alive because humans had answered their call for help. "Captain," Lisa said softly, "I'm getting a transmission from the planet's surface." The main screen filled with the image of an alien face. The Velani looked like tall, thin humans with large eyes and skin that seemed to glow with a soft green light. The alien who appeared on screen was obviously old, with white hair and gentle features. "Human ships," the Velani elder said in careful English, "we do not have words to thank you. You came when no one else would. You fought when the battle seemed impossible. You saved us when we had given up hope." Jake activated his communication system. "We heard your call for help. Humans always answer calls for help." The Velani elders, large eyes filled with tears. "Why? We are strangers to you. We have nothing to offer in return. Why did you risk so much for people you had never met?" Jake thought about the question for a moment. Then he smiled. "Because that's what humans do. Someone needed help, and we were in a position to give it. We couldn't live with ourselves if we had just sailed away and let innocent people die." "The galaxy will remember this day," the Velani elder said. "The galaxy will remember that. When the Korath brought death, humans brought hope. When evil threatened the innocent, humans stood in the way. We will never forget." Admiral Thompson's voice came over a private channel to Jake. "Captain Morrison, you and your crew are heroes." "You?" held off an entire fleet with a cargo ship. That's going into the history books. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all smiling now, tired but proud. "Admiral, we just did what any human would do. We saw people in trouble, and we helped." 6 months later, the new frontier was flying again, rebuilt and improved with new technology given as a gift by the grateful Villani. Jake kept a recording of that first distress call in his cabin. Sometimes when new crew members asked why humans always seemed to find themselves in dangerous situations, he would play it for them. "Listen to that voice," he would tell them. Someone was calling for help. They were scared and alone and about to die. And they believed that somewhere in the galaxy, someone might care enough to help them. How could we disappoint them? The galaxy had learned something important that day. Humans had left their dangerous homeworld, but they had brought their protective instincts with them. In a universe full of species that had evolved on safe, peaceful planets, humanity stood alone as the children of a world that had taught them one simple lesson: you protect your family, no matter what the cost. Now, the human family included anyone brave enough to call for help.